Hello, my name is Cyrus Nilchan and I am a technical evangelist for IBM Storage. Today I am going to install IBM Tivoli Storage FlashCopy Manager for VMware version 3.1. I am now inside a virtual machine. It's a SUSE Linux Enterprise virtual machine, and I'm now in my installation directory from where I will run the installation wizard. So all I need to do is call the install bit. Version 3.2, which is the latest version, is very similar to version 3.1, which is the one I am going to install here. So we are getting prompted with an installation screen where we accept the installation language. And we accept the terms in the license agreement. And we're going for a default installation. And in order to connect to vCenter, I have to specify the host name of vCenter, a username, and a password. Now FlashCopy Manager will make a connection to vCenter. It will verify that the provided credentials are correct. And in my case, they are correct. Otherwise, I would have gotten an error here. And I am now being presented with the installation folder, the username, that's the Linux username, and a configuration directory, and I will also see the disk space information here. Now the installation process is starting, and this process will install FlashCopy Manager for VMware. My next step will be to configure FlashCopy Manager for VMware. Okay, so my installation went through successfully, and the product is installed in /opt/tivoli tsm tdp VMware, and I am now simply clicking done, and the installation is done. Before I run through the configuration wizard, I will create a specific file, an FCT file which contains the source and target volumes which will be flash copied. I am using IBM Send Volume Controller as my underlying disk subsystem here. In order to create this file, I'm changing into home tdp VMware config, and here I am using my favorite editor, and I am creating an FCT file. In my case, it is named target.fct. I have copied and pasted the content here. So I am basically defining the FlashCopy target, which in my case is VE_target_student1, and I am also defining the source volume, which is VE_student_1, and I am also defining a dash at the end, which is very important for FlashCopy Manager. So this is how the FCT file could look like, and I'm going to save this file now, and done. Before I continue with the configuration, I am bringing up a web browser which will show us how these volumes are defined in SAN volume controller. So I'm now logged into SAN volume controller, and in here I can look at the volumes. We have a number of volumes on the SAN volume controller. The one of interest here is VE student 1, which is the volume that hosts the VMware data store. Let me double click on this and we can actually get an overview here. It's an 80 gigabyte volume and the volume is online. We can also look at the host maps. So this volume is mapped to vSphere 03 enablement IBM lab, which is the ESX server which I am using here. We can also look at the actual FlashCopy relationships. And in here we also find the source volume, VE student _1, and the target volume. And this has been predefined, so there is an existing FlashCopy relationship, and this is the one that our installation will use. I am using space efficient target volumes here, and I'm also only keeping one backup version, which is pretty untypical, but for demonstration purposes it basically allows me to simply overwrite. Every time I do a new backup, I simply overwrite the target volume. The installation was done under root. Now I am actually changing my user to TDP VMware. So the configuration is done under this specific username, and I am now changing into the installation directory, and that was opt Tivoli TSM TDP VMware /FCM. And in here I can call the configuration script. It's a text-based interface, and it is started by simply entering setup.sh, and this will now start the configuration wizard. You do not have to use the configuration wizard. You can also simply manually edit the profile. I will use the configuration editor now, and it prompts me for parameters and it offers me defaults. In brackets you can see the actual defaults. So the first parameter that is being provided is the path to FlashCopy Manager, to its directory. And this is the default path, so all I have to do is click enter, and as a next step I have to provide the host name and the port of the machine running the management agent of FlashCopy Manager, which is in my case this Linux virtual machine. I'm using the same virtual machine for hosting FCM as well as providing the WebSphere-based plugin graphical user interface for vCenter. So I'm accepting the default here. And now I have to specify the path to the repository directory. In my case, this is /home TDP VMware TDP VMware config, and then the name of the repository, which is ACSREP. Okay, the next step is to provide the host name of the server which hosts Virtual Center. In my case, this is simply center. I'm providing this. Now I have to provide the host name or IP address of the auxiliary ESX host. This is the ESX host which is used during restore operations. FlashCopy Manager will attach or mount the target volume back to an ESX host in order to extract individual virtual machines for restore purposes. In my case, this is vSphere 03 dot enablement dot IBM dot lab. Okay, now I need to provide the credentials to log into vCenter, and I'm going to use administrator. Then I am prompted for the backup mode. Before FlashCopy Manager can take a snapshot of the complete data store, there are snapshots being taken within VMware. Each VM is being snapshotted. This is a VMware-based snapshot. I can specify here what kind of snapshots I would like to take. I can take snapshots for the individual VMs including their memory or excluding their memory. I can take snapshots of suspended VMs, or I can take snapshots of VMs as is. As is means that we are just going to perform a crash consistent backup of each virtual machine. So we're basically not taking a VMware snapshot. The default, and I'm going with the default, is snapshot underscore excluding memory. Okay, let's assume I would have a different storage disk subsystem which I would like to attach. I can do that here. I don't have that, so I can leave that empty and proceed. I can also specify another instance here, and I do not have that, so I am just going to say no, I only have one disk subsystem. And since FlashCopy Manager uses a Derby database to store its metadata, it prompts me for the installation path, which I will accept the default, and it will also prompt me for a number of parameters: task scheduler interval, task expiration time for restore tasks, grace period for deleted backups, and the interval for reconciliation with FlashCopy Manager. I'm accepting all the defaults here. It can also back up its own database, and I go with the default, which is midnight. I am going to specify 3 versions of this backup to be maintained. I'm entering a log path. And now we are in the section for the device class. The device class is basically the connection to the disk subsystem. In my case, SAN volume controller. So I have to specify this. We do support SAN volume controller, DS8000, XIV, and with the latest version also N-Series and NetApp. So I am specifying SVC here. And now I have to provide the server name, which is running the SIM agent. FCM does connect through the SIM agent to the disk subsystem, in this case again SVC. So that is SVC3 in my case. And now I'm prompted for an SVC user, and I am going to use FCM SVC, which is a predefined user. It was the same I used before to log in and show you the volumes. And I can set a priority for the background copy process. I'll leave this at 80. I can set the communication protocol. I leave that at HTTPS. And I can specify the FlashCopy type. This is very important. So you can specify a FlashCopy type of copy, no copy, or incremental FlashCopy. Copy will basically copy the complete source volume over to the target volume. No copy will perform a pointer copy on the fly. So only a bitmap is being held here, and at the time of the snapshot, no data are being transmitted from the source to the target. And in an incremental scenario, SVC would do an incremental refresh on the target volume. I am going to use no copy, and I'm using no copy because my intention is to use space efficient targets on the SAN volume controller. So I'm specifying no copy here. And the next question is, how does FlashCopy Manager find out what the target volume sets are? You can basically have FlashCopy Manager automatically discover the target volumes, or you can use pre-assigned volumes, which is what I want to do here. So I'm specifying volumes underscore file, which in my case is the target FCT file which I have created before. Logically, as a next step, I have to provide the path to the FCT file, which is in my case /home /tdpvmware /tdpvmware /config /target FCT. Okay, and that was it for the SAN volume controller configuration. We will be prompted to supply the passwords at the end of the configuration wizard. And we do not want to add another device class here, so I simply go with no. And the profile has been created. So now we have a profile, which is actually a file called profile, in home TDP VMware config. Next step is to provide a password for the authentication with the ACS daemon. That's basically in FlashCopy Manager password. I'm providing a password. The same password for verification. And now I have to provide the password for the SAN volume controller. Password is being verified. And we are getting a return code 0, so the connection is successful. And the last password is the one for connecting to vCenter, which I have to specify now. This is also being checked, and we can actually see that a password file has been created. It's an encrypted password file, and our configuration is done at this point in time. Please keep in mind that if you make a mistake, you can always simply rerun through the configuration wizard as many times as you like. You can also edit the profile directly, and I will show this in the next step. Okay, so let's see how our profile looks like. It's in the same path. And this is how the profile looks like. So all the parameters that we just defined are stored here and can be manually edited here. Everything except the password. Those are the different sections. The device class here. And I will change a parameter now to illustrate how that works. And I'm going to change the hostname mapping parameter. I'm using vsphere 03 enablement.ibm.lab, and I'm using pre-assigned volumes. Okay, now I'm ready to save. That was it. This is how you edit the profile of FlashCopy Manager for VMware. FCM for VMware also offers a command line option. And I'm going to use the command line right now. So all I have to do is I have to call vmcli -f for function. And now I have a variety of options that I can use here, and I'm going to use the inquire option. So I'm going to specify inquire underscore detail. And this will do a check for me, and it will find out if FlashCopy Manager for VMware is functioning properly, and if all the parameters that are needed are being set. And since I'm getting a return code of 0, this is the case here. So now I am going to log in into VMware vSphere Client to show you how the graphical user interface for FCM for VMware looks like, and I will also kick off a simple backup to basically show that my configuration was successful. So I'm logging in here into Center, Username Administrator. And from here I can navigate to Home, and Home will actually have a Tivoli data protection for VMware FCM01 here, and that is the plugin GUI that was installed while we were installing FlashCopy Manager for VMware. And I can now simply click on it, and it will now bring up the plugin graphical user interface for FCM for VMware. So it pretty much looks like a regular vSphere client view here, and we can actually see all the data stores that we have defined. It automatically connected to vCenter and found out what data stores are available. And I will pick now this data store, which is ds_student1. This is the data store which I have defined in my send volume controller as the one being flash copied. I can also switch the view here to hosts, but I'll stick with data stores, and I'm going to pick just one virtual machine from here, and I am defining a backup task. It will take me through a wizard, and I can specify a schedule name, and a description. Now select the data store, in my case ds_student1, and the virtual machine which I would like to protect. Even if I select only one virtual machine, FlashCopy Manager for VMware will flash copy the complete data store. During restore, I can then select which virtual machine I would like to restore. But FlashCopy Manager, again, it is based on the underlying disk subsystem, and it will always flash copy or snapshot the complete data store containing with the associated LUNs. I can here now define again whether I want to do snapshots including memory, excluding memory, suspending the VMs, or the as-is option. You remember the option before where I have defined the parameters. In this case I can override it, but I will still keep the default, which is take a snapshot of the associated VMs without the memory. Now I can choose my destination, which in this case is send volume controller. So standard, that was the name of the device class I've defined before. So I can select that. If I would have multiple, I would have a drop-down menu here. And I can also execute immediately and click next. I am going to be prompted with the source names and the device class and the backup type, which is FCM. There is also the possibility to use FCM in combination with Tivoli Storage Manager. So if you install TSM for virtual environments on top of FlashCopy Manager, you actually have the option to take local snapshots and or send those local snapshots into the TSM server. I just defined a standalone configuration here, so all I have to do is click finish, and now I can actually monitor the backup task. So we can see how the FlashCopy proceeds with all its phases, and we can also see the associated messages down here in the task menu of vCenter. So the verifying phase just began. This process will take only a couple of minutes depending on the number of volumes in the send volume controller. It is almost independent of the size of these volumes. So you can perform a backup in virtually no time with virtually no I/O load. It is renaming the data store now. And it is finished now. So cleanup work has been done. The temporary snapshots which were created in VMware are also being deleted at this point in time. Now I am going to navigate back to my backup tab, and I can see here whether my backup was successful or not. So I can see this was my backup schedule, and I can see the status here, success. And if I double click this and scroll down, I can actually get some information about it. If I would have an error, it would show up here and tell me the actions that I would have to take in order to correct the error. So I know my configuration was successful and my first initial backup went through. So let's see how this operation shows up in send volume controller. So I'm opening up a web browser. It could run from anywhere, and look inside the send volume controller, and I am particularly interested in the VE_student1 volume. So I can see here the source and the target volume, and I can see it in copying state. What that means is that a FlashCopy relationship with the parameter no copy has been established. So every change that happens on the source is automatically transported onto the target in the background by send volume controller. We can actually take a closer look into this one, and what we can also do, we can actually edit the properties. Edit the properties means I can force this volume to perform a fully allocated flash copy if I wish to do so. So I could theoretically set the backup copy rate to 100 and the cleaning rate to 100, and this would turn my no copy type flash copy into a copy type flash copy. I could save it, and it will now basically force the copy of the source onto the target volume. So everything went fine, my configuration went through successfully, and this is how easy it is to configure FlashCopy Manager for VMware. Thank you very much for your attention.